Hello everybody, today we're taking a look at the Hobbymate HB120 quad balance charger. This is essentially 4 chargers in one and features a built-in AC to DC power supply. Let's start off and take a look at the specifications. It has an AC input from 100 volts to 240 volts, a DC input from 11 volts to 18 volts. It has an output power of 120 watts per channel or 480 watts for all 4 channels combined. It has a discharge power of 10 watts per channel or 40 watts combined. It has a charge current range of 0.1 amps to 10 amps as it says on the box, but it's actually 12 amps. It has a discharge current range between 0.1 amps and 5 amps. It charges all current lithium battery technologies from lithium ion, lithium polymer, lithium iron, also lithium high voltage from 1S to 6S batteries. It charges NiCad and nickel metal hydride batteries from 1 to 15 cells. It charges lead acid batteries from 2 volts to 20 volts, which is from 1 to 10 cells. It has a current drain capability for the balancing for the LiPos of 300 milliamps per cell. It has a weight of approximately 2.8 kilograms. Its dimensions are approximately 294 by 199 by 76 millimeters. So let's go ahead and get this out of the box. So you get the charger, and you get 4 different packs of leads, one for each channel. The battery leads are Deans, and the balance connectors for each one of the channels. You get an XT60 connector. This is for the DC input, so you can connect it up to a battery or some other DC source. Yeah, you get a power cord, and you get a manual. So let's get this out of the box and get it set up. So let's take a look around the charger. On the left side, you have some cooling fans and your AC input. On the right side, some more cooling fans and your DC input. In the front, you have your connections for all your batteries, one for each of the 4 channels. You have your main battery lead connections, your positive and your negative, and you have your balance board connections for each one of the 4 channels. You also have a temperature sensor input. No temperature sensors are supplied with this balance charger, but you can buy these separately, and if you wanted to measure the temperature of your batteries while you're charging them, you could do this here, and it has the circuitry in here to be able to monitor that. I've never actually used any of those. So in the front, you have LCDs and control buttons for each one of the 4 charger outputs. So let's go ahead and get this wired up and plugged in. So now I've got the battery leads and the balance boards plugged in. So let's go ahead and power it up. On the front here, you have battery type, decrement, increment, and start. So let's take a closer look at the menu functions. So when it first starts up, it starts off in LiPo balance mode, which is probably the most common mode that people are going to use. But if you press battery type, it brings you out to the main menu. And so from here, you can select your battery types. You first start off with LiPo battery, lithium ion, lithium iron, lithium high voltage, and then you have some special functions like lithium battery meter, lithium battery internal resistance, system setup, battery memory, and then you have your lead acid battery, NiCad batteries, nickel metal hydride batteries, and you're back out to LiPo batteries. So let's go further into LiPo batteries. So we'll press start. So the first mode in LiPo is LiPo balance. So this is where when you connect up the balance charge lead to the charger, then you can balance a cell. So if I press start here, it'll give me an option to change the current, and press start again, and it gives me an option to change the number of cells. So I'll press stop here and go back out to the main menu, or to the LiPo menu. And so then, again, still selecting LiPo. So we have LiPo balance function, and then we have lithium charge function. So this is essentially LiPo charging without the balance function. Again, setting current and number of cells. So you press increment again. You have LiPo fast charge. The way I think about LiPo fast charge is that the last 5% of the charge takes about 20% of the time. So this essentially skips the last 5% of the charge and doesn't charge your batteries to 100%, but does take about only 80% of the time. And then you have LiPo storage. In this mode, it'll either charge or discharge your battery to the proper storage voltage. For lithium polymer, is approximately 3.85 volts per cell. And then you have lithium discharge, which is similar to storage, but this just discharges to those proper voltages. And then you're back out to lithium balance. So if we press stop here, it should bring us back out to the main menu. So then we have lithium ion, similar functions, current, and number of cell counts. We have lithium iron, again, the same, current and number of cells. Lithium high voltage, it's the same. And then we have lithium battery meter. So we'll look at this when we get a battery plugged up. Same for internal resistance. If system setup functions, we'll take a look at this in a minute. You have battery memory. So then under lead acid battery, you essentially have charge current and number of volts that you're charging up to. And then you have discharge for this. Those are the only two functions. And then moving on to NiCad battery. So on here you have amount of current. You do not have to select the number of cells for NiCad or nickel metal hydride. You just have to put the charge current in. It'll automatically top up the battery. And then you have auto charge. And you have discharge. And then you have repeak. So essentially the way charging for NiCads and nickel metal hydrides work is that it essentially applies a charge current, and then it lets off it for a little bit of time, and then it sees if it's peaked or not. And so this is the amount of times that it'll check for the peaks. And then you have the NiCad cycle. You use this for conditioning your battery. So this is a discharge to charge cycle, and you can set the number of times that it's going to do it here. So this will just do it for one cycle. And you're back out to the main NiCad menu. The nickel metal hydride are the same functions as the NiCad. And then we're back out to LiPo. So let's real quick go back and look at those system setups. You have system setup. So this first menu item is the charge discharge cycle time. So this is what I was talking about just a second ago for nickel metal hydrides. This is the amount of time that it waits between the charge and discharge cycles for when you're conditioning a battery. You have safety timer. So this timer, or this timer sets the amount of time that you'll charge until the charger sets off. This is a safety function. So if it lasts more than 120 minutes, it'll shut down the charger. And you can change this. You have capacity cutoff. This is essentially determines the maximum amount of milliamp hours that it'll put into a battery. It's turned on for 5,000 milliamp hours. This is again a safety function. If you want to increase this, you certainly can. You have the key beep and buzzer. This is the sound that it's making. The key beep is the sound that it's making while I'm pressing buttons. You can turn that on or off. And the buzzer is the sound it makes at the end of the charge cycle. So then you have input power low cutoff. This is essentially where it's going to shut down the charger when the input power, the DC input power, gets below this value. So it's set for 11 volts. So use this if you had it hooked up to a car battery or some other battery and you didn't want to discharge that battery too far. And then you have the internal temperature and external temperatures. You see the external temperature is set to, it's only reading 0 degrees right now, 0 degrees Celsius. And that's because we don't have any external temperature sensors plugged in. But the internal temperature is monitoring is currently reading 22 degrees Celsius. And then you can load your factory firmware back in case you happen to mess up some sort of setting. You just want to revert it back to factory. That's the firmware version. And now we're back out to the main menu. And now we're into battery memory. So you can set up particular memory slots for different types of batteries. So if you're always charging, let's say 1300 milliamp hour 4 cells, you can set up a memory function to do this, where you just select that memory and it already has all those parameters that you've already set up, pre-configured, and you can, makes it a little easier and quicker. Pressing stop takes us back out to the main menu. So let's go over to LiPo. And let's get some batteries hooked up. So I have 4 batteries plugged in. I have a 4S1300, a 4S4200, a 3S1350, and a 4S6000. So let me show you some of those special functions I mentioned earlier. So if I press battery type, it gets you back out to the main menu. And I press increment until I get over to lithium battery meter. Pressing start I have the individual cell voltages for each one of the cells on this 4S battery. So you can see it's 3.82, 3.83, 3.83, and 3.83. They're very, very close. So that's one function. If I press increase again, you get battery resistance. Pressing start, this measures the internal battery resistance for each one of the cells in milliohms. So you can see it's 17, 12, 13, and 12. The lower the number here, the better it is. So a higher C battery will typically have lower numbers. So this is more or less a relative measurement for a particular battery. So what you can do is measure when you first get it, and then you'll see you measure it again later on and after you use it a while, and you'll see if it changes over time. So this is one of my relatively good batteries. Let me show you this battery, which is not one of my good batteries. So if I go back over here to lithium battery resistance, press start and checking battery, you can see here the values are, well, or they're over double than what this battery had. So this is kind of a soft battery. And you can see it's only got 3 values because there's only 3 cells in this battery. So let's press stop here and go back out to the main menu, and we'll start the charge cycles. Looking for LiPo. There we are. Okay, so this is a 1300 4S battery. So to charge at 1C, I'm going to charge it at 1.3 amps. So I'll press start, and I decrease that till it reaches 1.3. All right, and next, it's a 4S battery. But let's say, for instance, I accidentally made it a 3S battery. Holding down start will start the charge cycle. It's checking the battery. See, it tells me it's got the incorrect number of cells. So press stop. So that's a safety function. And change it to 4S. It confirms that it's 4S. You press confirm one more time. There you go. So what it's saying here is a lithium polymer 4S battery. It's currently charging at 0.3 amps, and it's an increase till it reaches 1.3. The current voltage on the pack is 15.38. The fully charged 4 cell, I should say, is 16.8. It has been charging for 21 seconds now and has put in 4 milliamp hours at this point. So that milliamp hour number here kind of corresponds to the 1300 milliamp hour on the pack. So if it doesn't get all the way to 1300 milliamp hours, it means you just didn't drain your pack fully when you discharged it. So let's set up the charge cycles on the rest of the packs. So I already got them dialed in. 4200 4S. So that's 4.2 amps at 14.8 volts, 4S. So press start. Holding it down. Checks it. Press start again. I have my 1350 3S. Holding down start. Checks it. Starting. And my 6000 milliamp hour 4S. Holding down start. So while it's charging, you can press increment here, and it shows you the individual cell voltage for each battery. So you can see the cell voltage for all the batteries I'm charging. So you can see this one's slightly out of balance, and it'll be balancing that, so they're all reading the same by the time it gets done charging. So pressing start gets you back out. So when we reviewed the specifications, we saw that each one of these 4 charging modules can put out a maximum of 120 watts. So what is 120 watts? Well, watts are volts times amps. So we remember, so for this 1300 milliamp hour, we're going to charge it to a maximum of 16.8 volts at 1.3 amps. So if you times 1.3 amps times 16.8 volts, you end up with about 22 watts. So, but this is capable of outputting up to 120 watts. So we're only using 22 watts of the 120 watt capability. So I made up a chart here to give you an idea of how many batteries you could charge on each one of the 120 watt channels. So let's say I'm looking at my 4S 1300s. So we just saw it was only we were only utilizing 22 watts of the 120, so that says that we can charge up to 5 1300 milliamp hour batteries on just one channel. So I could replace this battery with 5 1300 milliamp hour batteries and then be utilizing the full capability of the channel. So you have some other battery sizes here. You see I have my 4200 battery here. I can charge one of those. I can charge one of the 6000s on 4S. But if I start looking at 3S here, I can charge 7 1300 milliamp hours. I can charge 4 4200 milliamp hours. So this right now, what I've got hooked up, nowhere near is what this charger is capable of outputting. So how do you charge more than one battery per channel? You get something like this. These are relatively inexpensive. They're about $12. This is a parallel charge plate. So this plugs into the balance lead. This plugs into the battery lead, to the charger. And you can charge up to 6 or 7 batteries all at once off one of these. So let me get some of these hooked up and I'll show you the full capability of this charger. Alright, so here we are. I have to say, this is incredible. So there are some rules for parallel charging. You cannot mix cell counts. So these are all 4 cells. I could not put a 3 cell or 2 cell or a 5 cell in with 4 cells. So you have to always use the same 4 cells. So these are 4 cells, 4 cells, 3 cells, and 3 cells. The other rule is all the batteries need to be fairly close to the same voltage. So if you don't already have one, which you likely already do, but if you don't, it's a good idea to get one of these little battery checkers. So you can check the individual cells. So on this battery, number 1 cell is 3.83, 3.85, and 3.83. So all of these batteries I have connected here, I would want the individual cells to be within 0.1 to 0.2 volts of each other. And when you fly and you discharge your batteries, you typically get pretty close. I never really have to adjust them at all. They're all fairly close when I get done flying. So that's really the other rule. In addition to that, when you plug them in, it's a good idea to plug in the main leads first. So I always plug in all the main leads and don't plug in the balance leads. So I plug in all the main leads across multiple balance boards. And what that does is that lets that small differential voltage between each pack, it lets it equalize among all the packs. And then you plug in the balance leads. That way you're not pushing a lot of current through these fairly small wires in the balance leads. So next, what you would do is you would count up all the milliamp hours for all your packs. So I have 4 1300 milliamp hour packs here and 1 1000. So that all comes up to 6200 milliamp hours. So that is what you dial in to your charger. So you can see here, I got 6200 milliamp hours. I've already counted up. All these batteries equate to 5500 milliamp hours. All of these batteries equate to 9200 milliamp hours. And these 2 batteries, which are 4200 milliamp hours each, total up to 8400 milliamp hours or 8.4 volts. So then you set the number of cells for each one of them. So I've got 4.8. I've got 4 cells over here, so it's set to 4 cells, 4 cells, 3 cells, and I need to change this one here to 3 cells. All right. So when all that's done, you can start the charge cycle, holding it down. Press start, number 2, number 3, and number 4. All right, so all 18 batteries here are charging all at once. So with that, I can, that really shows you the capability of a charger like this. So, this is a full day of flying. And I can charge all of them within the time another charger might just charge one. So I can charge all my batteries at once. Takes less than an hour usually to charge all of these at 1C, and I'll be done. And so that's really where a large charger like this shines. This is probably one of the most powerful and versatile chargers you have on the market. They have chargers that with a single output that can charge high current as well, but it doesn't have 4 individual outputs, which lets you do, 4 cells and 2 cells and 3 cells or 6 cells. So this gives you the most versatility, having 4 individual outputs. So this is by far the most incredible charger I've ever used. So that concludes this review, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch it.